The metal chair creaked under Commander Zexai's weight as he shifted uncomfortably in the small interview room. His massive frame looked out of place in the human-sized furniture aboard Nexus Prime Station. Alien's dark green scales caught the harsh white light from above, showing old battle scars that crisscrossed his thick hide like a roadmap of violence. Elena Martinez sat across from him, her recording device placed carefully on the table between them. She had interviewed many soldiers before, both human and alien, but something about this Valorian warrior felt different. His 4 amber eyes kept darting around the room, as if looking for threats that weren't there. "Thank you for agreeing to this interview," Commander Elena said, keeping her voice calm and professional. "I know this can't be easy for you." Zex's throat made a rumbling sound that the translator converted into what might have been a bitter laugh. "Easy. Nothing about humans is easy, Miss Martinez. That's what I learned during the war." Elena pressed a button on her recorder. "Why don't we start at the beginning? When did you first encounter human forces?" The alien commander's claws tapped nervously against the metal table. Each claw was as long as Elena's finger and looked like it could slice through steel. 3 years ago, when the Valorian Empire first moved into what you call the Outer Rim territories, we thought it would be simple. Your species was new to space travel. Your technology was basic compared to ours. Your ships were small and weak. What changed your mind? Zexai was quiet for a long moment. His breathing came in slow, heavy sounds through his large nostrils. "Everything changed my mind, Miss Martinez. Everything about how you fight, how you think, how you refuse to accept defeat even when it's staring you in the face." Elena leaned forward slightly. "Can you give me a specific example?" "The mining world of Kepler 4 to be," Zexai said immediately, as if the name had been waiting on his tongue. "That was my first real battle against humans. I commanded a battle group of 12 ships. The humans had one small base with maybe 200 people. Expected them to surrender as soon as they saw our fleet. But they didn't? No. They sent us a message instead. Just 2 words in basic galactic standard. Come down. Not surrender terms, not negotiations. Just those 2 words." Elena made a note on her tablet. "What did you think of that response?" 4 eyes focused on different points around the room before settling on Elena's face. "I thought they were stupid. In Valorian culture, when you face impossible odds, you surrender with honor. You live to fight another day. It's logical." "Make sense? And humans don't think that way?" "Humans don't think the way anyone else in the galaxy thinks," Zexai replied, his voice growing quieter. "We sent down landing craft with 500 warriors, elite troops who had conquered dozens of worlds. Should have taken that base." In less than an hour, Lena waited as the alien commander stared at his claws. She could see his hands shaking slightly. "The humans had been busy while we talked," he continued. "They had turned their mining equipment into weapons. Big drilling machines that could punch through armor. Explosive charges that they used for mining became bombs. Even their cargo haulers had been fitted with weapons." "Did your forces take heavy casualties?" "You lost 60 warriors in the first wave," Zexai said. 60 experienced soldiers killed by miners and engineers who had no formal military training. But that wasn't the worst part. What was the worst part? Zexai's claws scraped against the table surface, leaving thin scratches in the metal. The worst part was how they fought. "Valorian warriors are brave. We charge into battle with honor. We face our enemies in the open. But humans fight like the planet itself wants to kill you." Lena frowned. "I don't understand." "They use the environment as a weapon," Zexai explained. "The mining base was built into caves and tunnels. Humans knew every passage, every hidden route. They would attack from behind, kill some of my warriors, then disappear into the tunnels before we could respond. Guerrilla warfare." "I didn't know that term then," Zexai admitted. "In all our military training, we never learned about fighting an enemy who wouldn't stand and face you. An enemy who used the ground itself as an ally." Lena made another note. "How did the battle end?" "Took us 6 days to clear the base," Zexai said. "Well, 6 days to defeat 200 humans with 500 elite Valorian warriors. And even when we thought we had one, they kept fighting." "What do you mean, Zex?" Heist's breathing became heavier. "The human commander was a man named Captain Roy Blake. We found him in the main control room, badly wounded. He was the last human alive in the base. I went to accept his surrender personally. Did he surrender? He looked at me with these human eyes, blue eyes like pieces of sky, and he smiled. Actually smiled at me while bleeding from multiple wounds. Then he said something I'll never forget. Alina waited, said, "You want this base so badly? You can have it." Then he pressed a button on his control panel. What happened? The entire base exploded, HFY whispered. Captain Blake had rigged the mining charges throughout the tunnel system. He waited until most of my warriors were inside, then brought the whole mountain down on top of us. Alina felt a chill run down her spine. How many of your people died? 320 warriors, HFY said, including Captain Blake himself. He killed more of my people in his final act than in the entire 6-day battle, and he did it with a smile on his face. That must have been shocking for your forces. Shocking doesn't begin to describe it, HFY replied. In Valorian culture, suicide is the act of a coward. But what Captain Blake did wasn't cowardice. It was ... something else. Something we had no word for. Alina thought about this. What did your commanders think? They thought it was an isolated incident? One human commander who had gone insane from stress? They said it wouldn't happen again. HFY's 4 eyes met Alina's 2. They were wrong. It happened again and again and again. Every battle? Every single battle with humans was different from what we expected, HFY confirmed. Your species doesn't just fight to win. You fight to make winning cost your enemy everything they have. You turn victory into defeat by making it too expensive. To achieve? Alina paused her recording for a moment. Commander, why did you want to tell these stories? The war is over now. There's peace between our peoples. HFY was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was very soft. Because my people need to understand what they faced. And because I think your people don't understand what they are. What do you mean? Humans think they fight for good reasons. Freedom, justice, protecting their families, noble causes. HFY's claws tapped the table again. But what I saw in battle was something much deeper, something that frightened every Valorian warrior who survived to talk about it. Which was, humans don't just fight to win battles, HFY said. You fight to make sure your enemies wish they had never been born. You turn warfare into an art form where the greatest victory is making your opponent suffer for daring to challenge you, Alina. Felt another chill. Is that how all Valorians see humans now? The ones who fought against humans and lived? Yes, HFY replied. We call you the species that makes death preferable to victory. It's not meant as an insult. It's a warning. The interview room fell silent, except for the low hum of the station's life support systems. Alina looked at her notes, then back at the massive alien warrior sitting across from her. There are more stories, aren't there? What? She asked. HFY nodded slowly. Many more stories, Miss Martinez, each one stranger and more terrifying than the last. Alina watched as Commander HFY's claws dug deeper scratches into the metal table. The alien warrior's breathing had become heavier, and his 4 amber eyes kept looking at the walls as if he could see through them to some distant memory. The mining base was just the beginning, HFY said after a long pause. My commanders still thought it was unusual behavior. They said humans would learn to fight properly once they faced a real military challenge. What was the next major battle? Alina asked, keeping her voice gentle. Haven Colony, HFY replied immediately. The name seemed to cause him physical pain. A human settlement on the edge of what you call the Kepler system. 30,000 civilians, and a small military base with maybe 500 Terran Marines. Alina made notes on her tablet. How large was the Valorian force? 40 warships, HFY said. My entire battle fleet. We surrounded the planet completely. No ship could leave without our permission. The humans had only 3 old frigates. In orbit, ancient ships that should have been scrapped years ago. Those seemed like impossible odds for the humans. Any rational species would have surrendered immediately, HFY agreed. We sent them generous terms. Keep their colony, live under Valorian protection, pay reasonable taxes. No one would be harmed. It was a fair offer, but they rejected it. Zexai's throat made that rumbling sound again. The colony commander was a human named Colonel Jake Morrison, career soldier, about 50 years old, with gray hair and cold blue eyes. He sent back a message that was only 2 words long. Alina waited. "Come take it," Zexai said quietly. It's those same words we had heard before, but this time from a man who was facing 40 warships, with 3 broken-down frigates and a handful of Marines. "What did your fleet do?" "We gave them one more chance," Zexai said. "My admiral sent a personal message explaining that we had enough firepower to turn their planet into glass. We could destroy their ships, their cities, everything they had. Built, all they had to do was surrender." And Morrison's response? "He launched his 3 frigates directly at our flagship," Zexai said, his voice becoming very quiet. "A suicidal charge against impossible odds. We destroyed 2 of them easily, and the 3rd frigate was different." Alina leaned forward. "Different? How?" "The captain was a human woman named Lisa Chen," Zexai continued. "She had loaded her ship with mining explosives. Tons of them, more than any ship should carry. She aimed her frigate directly at our primary dreadnought and pushed her engines to maximum power." "A suicide run? We tried to stop her ship with defensive fire?" "Captain Chen had reinforced her frigate's front armor with extra plating. Our weapons couldn't punch through fast enough. She rammed us at full speed and detonated every explosive on her ship." Zexai paused, staring at his claws. "The explosion was like a small star going off next to our hull," he whispered. "It tore a hole through 3 decks of our dreadnought. 800 Valorian warriors died in seconds, including my younger brother, who served on the weapons deck." Alina felt sympathy for the alien commander. "I'm sorry for your loss. Captain Chen could have tried to escape," Zexai said. "Her ship was fast enough to run, but she chose to die. To hurt us? That was when I began to understand that humans don't think like other species." "What happened next?" "We began the ground assault," Zexai replied. 15,000 Valorian warriors landed on Haven Colony. The humans had maybe 800 Marines and civilian militia. It should have been over in hours, but it wasn't. Zexai shook his head slowly. The humans had spent weeks preparing for our invasion. They had turned their entire colony into a fortress. Every building was a bunker. Every street was a trap. Even the children were part of their defense plan. Alina looked up from her notes. Children, human children as young as 12, were carrying weapons and fighting alongside adults, Zexai said, his voice filled with something that might have been horror. "In Valorian culture, children are protected. They stay far from battle until they are old enough to choose warrior training. But human children fought like tiny soldiers." "That must have been disturbing for your warriors. My soldiers didn't know how to handle it," Zexai admitted. "We are trained to fight other warriors, not young ones who should be playing games. But these human children would throw explosive devices from windows, then disappear into hidden tunnels before we could respond." Alina made more notes. "What about the civilian population?" "There was no civilian population," Zexai said. "Every human in that colony was a combatant. Old people, young people, even those who worked in hospitals and schools, they all fought." "Ow!" "Did they coordinate their defense?" "That was the most frightening part," Zexai replied. "The humans seemed to know exactly where we were at all times. They would attack our weakest points, hit our supply lines, ambush our patrols. It was like fighting an enemy that could read our minds. Superior intelligence gathering. Better than that," Zexai said. "The humans had connected every building in their colony with hidden communication lines. Even when we destroyed their command center, they kept coordinating their attacks. Every human was a soldier. Every building was a fortress. Every street was a battlefield." Lena looked at her recording device to make sure it was still working. "What were the worst moments for your forces?" Zexai was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "The surrender traps," he said finally. "What do you mean?" "Humans would wave white flags and pretend to give up," Zexai explained. "My warriors would approach to accept their surrender. Following proper military protocol, then the humans would detonate hidden explosives, killing themselves and taking as many of my soldiers with them as possible. Alina felt sick. How many times did this happen? Dozens of times, Zexai replied. After the first few incidents, we stopped accepting surrenders. But then the humans would leave wounded comrades in the open, crying for help. When my warriors approached to give medical aid, those wounded humans would trigger more explosives. They used their own wounded as weapons. They used everything as weapons, Zexai said. Their hospitals were filled with booby traps. Their schools had hidden sniper positions. Even their playgrounds had been turned into killing fields with concealed mines. Elena shook her head. How long did the battle last? 47 days, Zexai said. 47 days to take one human colony with overwhelming force. We lost 12,000 warriors. The humans lost all 30,000 of their people. No survivors. None, Zexai confirmed. But they made us pay for every building, every street, every room. By the end, my warriors were afraid to enter human structures. They knew each building might be their tomb. What about Colonel Morrison? Zexai's 4 eyes focused on Elena's face. We found him in the ruins of the final command bunker. He had fought to the very end, even when he was the last human alive in the colony. He was still holding a detonator when we found his body. A detonator. He had rigged the entire remaining section of the colony with explosives, Zexai explained. Even in death, he was trying to kill more of my warriors. If that detonator had worked, he would have taken another 1,000 Valorians with him. Alina sat back in her chair. What did your commanders think of the battle? They declared it a great victory, Zexai said bitterly. We had conquered Haven Colony, controlled the planet. But my warriors knew the truth, which was, we had won the battle, but the humans had won something else. Zexai replied. They had shown us that victory against humans would always cost more than we could afford to pay. Every human colony would fight like Haven Colony, so every battle would cost us thousands of warriors. Lena looked at her notes. Did this change Valorian strategy? The High Command ordered us to be more aggressive, Zexa said. They thought we had been too gentle, too willing to offer surrender terms. They said we needed to show humans the price of resistance, and did you? Zexai's claws scraped against the table again. We tried, Miss Martinez. We tried to show humans the price of fighting us. But every time we escalated, humans escalated even more. They seemed to have no limit to what they would sacrifice to hurt us. The interview room fell silent again. Alina could hear the alien commander's heavy breathing and the distant hum of the station's engines. There are more stories, aren't there? She asked. Many more, Zexai replied. Each one worse than the last. Alina noticed that Commander Zexai's hands had stopped shaking. Instead, they remained perfectly still on the table, as if he was using all his strength to control them. His 4 amber eyes had taken on a distant look, staring at something. Only he could see. After Haven Colony, the High Command decided we needed to capture a major human facility, Zexai said slowly. Something important enough that humans would have to defend it properly, like civilized warriors. What did they choose? Alina asked. Arcturus Station, Zexai replied. A massive space dock that served as the main supply hub for the entire human fleet in this sector. If we could take it, we would cut off supplies to dozens of human worlds. Alina made notes. How large was this station? Enormous, Zexai said. Big enough to dock 50 ships at once, home to almost 100,000 humans. Workers, families, engineers, traders. It was like a floating city. And the defenses. 8,000 human marines, under the command of Admiral Roy Patterson, Zexai answered. A man in his 60s, with white hair and scars on his face from old battles. The intelligence reports said he was one of the most experienced human commanders. What forces did the Valorians bring? Throat made that low rumbling sound again. Everything we had. 100 warships. 50,000 elite warriors. Siege weapons that could crack open a moon. We weren't going to make the same mistakes we made at Haven Colony. You brought overwhelming force. I thought it would be enough, Zexai said quietly. We surrounded the station completely. No escape routes. We demanded immediate surrender. Admiral Patterson had 48 hours to evacuate civilians and surrender his military personnel. Lena looked up from her tablet. Did he respond? Sent back a single word. Zexai replied, "No, not we refuse, or we will fight. Just know in basic galactic standard." "What was your next move?" "We began bombardment of the station's outer defenses," Zexai said. "Standard procedure. Destroy their weapons, damage their hull, force them to surrender before we had to board them." "Did it work?" Zexai was quiet for a long moment. "The humans didn't fight back the way we expected. They didn't try to match our firepower. Instead, they did something that made no sense." "What did they do?" "They invited us inside." "Zexai," said his voice becoming very soft. "Admiral Patterson sent us a message saying that his outer defenses were damaged and he was ready to discuss surrender terms. He asked us to send boarding parties to secure different sections of the station." Elena frowned. "That sounds too easy." "It was too easy," Zexai agreed. "But our commanders thought the humans had finally learned sense. They thought Patterson was being smart by surrendering before more people died. But he wasn't really surrendering." "No," Zexai said. "He was setting the biggest trap I have ever seen." Alina waited as the alien commander gathered his thoughts. "We sent boarding parties to 12 different docking bays," Zexai continued. "Each party had 500 warriors, our best soldiers. They entered the station expecting to accept a formal surrender. What happened instead? The station came alive," Zexai whispered. "Some giant predator that had been pretending to be dead. As soon as our warriors were inside, Admiral Patterson activated systems we didn't know existed." "What kind of systems?" Zexai's claws began tapping the table again. The humans had spent months modifying their own station into a weapon. Artificial gravity generators had been changed. It could make gravity point in any direction or make it 10 times stronger than normal. Alina tried to imagine this. "What did that do to your warriors?" "Imagine walking down a corridor when suddenly gravity reverses," Zexai said. "My warriors were thrown against the ceiling where the humans had installed spinning blade mechanisms. Or gravity would increase until my soldiers were crushed against the floor." "That's horrible." "It got worse," Zexai continued. "The life support systems had been modified too. Instead of clean air, they pumped out gases that made my warriors see things that weren't there. Hallucinogenic chemicals that turned friends into enemies in their minds." Alina shuddered. "Your soldiers were fighting phantoms." "Some of them started fighting each other," Zexai confirmed. "They couldn't tell which targets were real and which were created by the drugs in their systems. But the humans knew exactly where everyone was because they controlled the station's sensors." "What about the waste systems you mentioned earlier?" "The humans had turned their garbage recyclers into weapons," Zexai said, his voice filled with disgust. "They shot streams of corrosive chemicals at anyone wearing Valorian environmental suits. The chemicals ate through our armor in minutes." Alina made more notes. "How did your forces try to adapt?" "We sent in more warriors with better equipment," Zexai replied. "Gas masks, stronger armor, magnetic boots to deal with the gravity changes. But every time we adapted, the humans had new surprises waiting, such as..." Zexai was silent for almost a minute, and he spoke again. His voice was barely audible. "The dead ones," he said. I don't understand." "After 3 days of fighting, we thought we had cleared several sections of the station," Zexai explained. "We counted the human bodies. We checked every room. Then we left small groups of warriors to hold those areas while the main force moved on. When we came back, those areas were full of human defenders again," Zexai said. "Humans firing weapons, throwing grenades, operating defensive positions. But something was wrong with them." Alina felt a chill run down her spine. "Wrong how?" "They moved strangely," Zexai said. "Like puppets being controlled by invisible strings. And they didn't make any sounds. No battle cries, no pain when they were shot. No communication with each other." "What were they?" "Corpses," Zexai whispered. "The humans had rigged their own dead with motion sensors and remote controls. The bodies were operated by living humans hiding in other parts of the station." Alina put down her stylus. They were using their dead as weapons. Dead humans were more dangerous than living ones, HFY confirmed. The corpses couldn't feel pain, couldn't be frightened, couldn't be reasoned with. They just kept attacking, until they were completely destroyed. How did your warriors handle fighting the dead? HFY admitted. Many of my soldiers couldn't bring themselves to shoot at bodies that looked human. Others became so disturbed they had to be removed from combat. Some started having nightmares about dead humans chasing them through the station corridors. Lena made more notes, trying to process what she was hearing. The psychological warfare was worse than the physical fighting, HFY continued. My warriors never knew if they were fighting living humans or dead ones. Every human body they saw might suddenly stand up and attack them. How long did the battle for the station last? 16 days, HFY said. We lost 23,000 warriors taking a station defended by 8,000 humans. And in the end, we didn't really win. What do you mean? On the 16th day, we finally cornered Admiral Patterson in the main command center, HFY explained. He was alone, wounded, surrounded by the bodies of his staff. We expected him to surrender, but he didn't. He looked at us and smiled, HFY said. The same kind of smile Captain Blake had given me at the mining base. Then he said something. I'll never forget. Alina waited. Said you wanted my station so badly. Keep it. Then he pressed a button on his control panel. The self-destruct. Worse than that, HFY replied. He had secretly evacuated all the civilians through hidden escape pods while we were fighting his Marines. The explosion he triggered wasn't meant to destroy the station. It was meant to turn it into a giant piece of shrapnel. I don't understand. Admiral Patterson had packed the station's core with explosives that would break it apart in a specific pattern, HFY explained. The debris field would make the entire star system impossible to navigate for decades. He denied us the system itself. Alina stared at her notes. He sacrificed his life and his station to deny you a strategic position. He traded one space station to destroy a third of our fleet and make an entire system useless to us, HFY confirmed. No Valorian commander would make such a trade. We fight to gain territory, to win glory, to expand our empire, and humans. Humans. Fight to make sure their enemies lose more than they gain, HFY said. Admiral Patterson didn't just die defending his station. He made sure that taking his station cost us more than leaving it alone would have. The interview room was quiet except for the sound of Elena's stylus scratching against her tablet. After Arcturus Station, did the Valorian strategy change again? She asked. The High Command started to realize we were fighting something we didn't understand, HFY replied. But they still thought humans were just unusually stubborn. They ordered us to capture human commanders alive for interrogation. Did that work? HFY's four eyes met Elena's too. That led to the worst encounter of all. Alina watched as Commander HFY's breathing became heavier. The alien warriors for Amber Eyes had taken on a haunted look that seemed to grow deeper with each story he told. His massive claws were now completely still on the table, as if he was afraid to move them. The High Command wanted human prisoners, HFY said slowly. They thought if we could capture and interrogate human commanders, we might understand how they think, how they plan their impossible strategies. That sounds reasonable, Alina said carefully. Nothing about humans is reasonable, HFY replied. But we didn't know that yet. So when our scouts detected a single human destroyer limping away from a failed raid on our supply lines, the admirals saw an opportunity. Alina made notes on her tablet. What was special about this destroyer? The ship was called the UTS Defiance, HFY said. It was damaged, alone, and far from any human support. The perfect target to capture alive. I was ordered to take 6 heavy cruisers and bring back the human crew for questioning. 6 ships against 1 damaged destroyer we learned to use. Overwhelming force against humans, HFY explained. Even a single human ship could be dangerous if we weren't careful. But this time seemed different. The Defiance was leaking atmosphere and power. It should have been an easy capture. Lena looked up from her notes. Who was the captain? A human woman named Amy Rodriguez, HFY said, about 40 years old, with dark hair and brown eyes. The intelligence files said she had been fighting. In space for over 20 years. A veteran of dozens of battles. What happened when you intercepted her ship? Zexai was quiet for a long moment. Captain Rodriguez led us into the Horsehead Nebula, a region of space filled with cosmic dust and electromagnetic interference. It's very dangerous for navigation. Why would she go there? At first we thought she was trying to hide, Zexai said. The nebula would interfere with our sensors and weapons. We thought she was desperate, making a mistake. Alina waited as the alien commander gathered his thoughts. We followed her into the nebula, Zexai continued. 6 ships against 1. But as soon as we entered that dark region of space, everything changed. How so? Captain Rodriguez knew that nebula like it was her home, Zexai said, his voice becoming very quiet. Humans had been exploring dangerous space while we stayed in safe mapped systems. She could navigate through the cosmic dust while we could barely see where we were going. Elena frowned. So she had an advantage? More than an advantage, Zexai replied. She turned the nebula itself into a weapon. For 3 weeks she led us through that maze of dust and energy, hitting us when we couldn't hit back, disappearing when we tried to pursue. Hit-and-run tactics. Worse than that, Zexai said. Captain Rodriguez would appear out of nowhere, fire at our most vulnerable. Systems then vanish back into the nebula before we could respond. She never attacked our weapons or shields. She targeted our engines, our life support, our navigation computers. Alina made more notes. She was trying to disable your ships instead of destroying them. At first we thought she was just being practical, Zexai said. It's 1 ship against 6, so she was trying to even the odds by crippling us. But then we started noticing something strange. What kind of strange? Zexai's claws tapped the table once, then stopped. My ships began having system failures that had nothing to do with battle damage. Engines would overheat for no reason. Life support would malfunction in specific sections. Navigation computers would give false readings, technical problems. We thought so at first, Zexai said, but the failures were too specific, too well-timed. They always happened when we were most vulnerable, when we were trying to coordinate attacks or escape from the nebula. Alina looked puzzled. I don't understand. Captain Rodriguez was somehow sabotaging our ships without boarding them, Zexai explained. We didn't understand how until much later. She had been launching microscopic drones during each attack, tiny machines that would attach to our hulls and slowly work their way into our systems. She was destroying you from the inside. Exactly, Zexai confirmed. While we were looking for her ship in the nebula, her little machines were eating our ships from within. It's like a disease that we couldn't see or fight. Elena shuddered. How many ships did you lose? 1 by 1, my cruisers became too damaged to continue, Zexai said. Engine failures, life support breakdowns, navigation, systems that couldn't tell up from down. I had to evacuate the crews to my flagship and abandon 5 ships in that cursed nebula. So you were down to 1 ship against 1? Yes, but my flagship was still much more powerful than her damaged destroyer, Zexai said. I thought we finally had her trapped. Captain Rodriguez was bleeding atmosphere and power, just like when we first found her. But it was another trap? Zexai nodded slowly. When I moved in for the final attack, Captain Rodriguez sent me a message. She said she wanted to arrange a formal surrender and prisoner exchange. Alina raised an eyebrow. Prisoner exchange? Said she had been collecting the escape pods from my abandoned ships, Zexai explained. 300 Valorian warriors who had been forced to evacuate when their vessels failed. She offered to return them in exchange for safe passage out of the nebula. That sounds like mercy. I thought so too, Zexai said quietly. In Valorian culture, showing mercy to defeated enemies is honorable. I agreed to meet her ship for the exchange. What happened? Captain Rodriguez brought her destroyer alongside my flagship, Zexai continued. The 2 ships were connected by docking tubes. I could see her on the bridge through the viewports. She looked tired, injured, but she was smiling. Alina waited. Then she activated her ship's ramming engines, Zexai whispered. She rammed you. At point-blank range, Zexai confirmed. The Defiance smashed into my flagship's hull with enough force to crack our main reactor. Both ships were dying, power failing, life support breaking down. But why? She had offered mercy prisoner exchange. High's 4 eyes focused on Elena's face, because she had already transmitted our location to the human fleet. While we were fighting in the nebula, she was calling for help. The ramming attack was just to make sure we couldn't escape before her reinforcements arrived. Elena felt sick. She used your own warriors as hostages. She saved 300 Valorian lives, then used those same lives to ensure I couldn't fire on her ship without killing my own people, Zexai said. And when she rammed us, she made sure both crews would be trapped together when the human fleet arrived. Did she survive the collision? Captain Rodriguez died when her ship's reactor exploded, Zexai replied, but she had already won. Flagship was crippled. My crew was mixed with rescued Valorians, and human warships were on their way. Elena looked at her notes. What happened to you? The human fleet arrived 6 hours later, Zexai said. They rescued everyone, both human and Valorian. They treated our wounded, shared their food and water, even gave us clean clothes. That sounds surprisingly kind. It was kind, Zexai. Agreed, but it was also the cruelest thing they could have done. Elena frowned. I don't understand. Don't you see? Zexai asked. Captain Rodriguez had saved my warriors' lives, then used their lives as weapons, then died to protect those same lives. She showed mercy and ruthlessness at the same time, Elena. Thought about this, the psychological impact. Exactly, Zexai said. My warriors didn't know how to feel about humans after that. Were they enemies or saviors, monsters or heroes? How do you fight an enemy who will die to save your life? What did your commanders think of this incident? They were confused, Zexai admitted. Captain Rodriguez had destroyed 6 Valorian warships with 1 damaged destroyer, but she had also saved 300 Valorian lives. The High Command didn't know whether to declare her a war criminal or a hero. Elena made more notes. How did this affect Valorian morale? My warriors started having nightmares, Zexai said quietly. Not about dying in battle, but about being saved by humans. They would wake up screaming about human mercy being worse than human cruelty. Why? Because when humans show mercy, it makes you realize how completely they could destroy you if they chose to, Zexai explained. Captain Rodriguez could have left my warriors to die in space. Instead, she saved them, used them, and died protecting them, all at the same time. Lena sat back in her chair. It must have been terrifying too. Experience. The most terrifying part was the smile, Zexai said. Even while ramming my ship, even while dying, Captain Rodriguez was smiling, like she knew something we didn't understand. What do you think she knew? Zexai was quiet for a long time. I think she knew that saving our lives would haunt us more than killing us would have. The interview room fell silent, except for the distant hum of the station's life support systems. There's one more story, isn't there? Elena asked. The final one, Zexai confirmed. The battle that ended the war and made my people realize we could never defeat humans. Not because we weren't strong enough, but because victory against humans isn't really victory at all. Elena could see that Commander Zexai was struggling to begin this final story. The alien warrior's breathing had become so heavy that his translator was having trouble keeping up. His 4 amber eyes kept closing and opening, as if he was trying to wake up from a nightmare. The final battle, Elena said gently. What made the Valorian Empire finally seek peace? Zexai was silent for almost 2 minutes. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. Earth's moon. The humans call it Luna. That's where we learn the truth about your species. What truth? That humans don't fight wars to win, Zexai said slowly. You fight wars to make sure everyone loses, especially yourselves. Elena frowned. I don't understand. The High Command decided to end the war with one massive strike, Zexai explained. Every Valorian ship, every warrior, every weapon we had left, we would attack the human homeworld and force them to surrender. Earth itself. The entire Valorian fleet, Zexai confirmed. 300 warships, 1 million warriors. Enough firepower to turn a planet into dust? We surrounded the Sol system completely. Alina made notes on her tablet. What were the human defenses? Pathetic, HFY said. Maybe 50 ships, most of them converted cargo haulers and mining vessels. The humans had sent their real fleet to defend the colonies. Earth was almost unprotected. That seems like a strategic mistake. We thought so too, HFY replied. The human commander was Admiral Kate Murphy, old woman in her 70s with gray hair and scars on her hands from old battles. She had maybe 30,000 defenders against our million warriors. What did she do when your fleet arrived? HFY's claws began tapping the table again. Admiral Murphy sent us a message. She said she wanted to discuss surrender terms. We thought finally humans would act sensibly when facing impossible odds. But they didn't. The surrender terms she offered were for us to surrender to her, HFY said quietly. Admiral Murphy said we had 30 minutes to leave the Sol system or face the consequences. Lena looked up from her notes. 30 minutes? Laughed. HFY admitted. 300 ships against 50. 1,000,000 warriors against 30,000. What consequences could they possibly threaten us with? What did Admiral Murphy do when you refused? She sent another message, HFY said. This one was different. She said, you want to take our home? Fine. But we'll make sure there's nothing left for anyone to have. Alina felt a chill. Did she mean? Admiral Murphy had equipped every human ship with experimental engines, HFY explained. Devices that could cause chain reactions in nearby vessels. She wasn't planning to fight us. She was planning to destroy the entire Sol system, including Earth, HFY confirmed. Admiral Murphy was willing to turn her own home world into a radioactive wasteland rather than let us have it. Alina stared at her tablet. That's insane. It's human, HFY corrected. When we analyzed her plan, we realized she could actually do it. The chain reaction would destroy both fleets and make the Earth system uninhabitable for centuries. What was the Valorian response? Panic, HFY said simply. My admirals had never faced an enemy willing to commit species suicide rather than accept defeat. They didn't know how to respond to a strategy that had no logic, no sense of self-preservation. Alina made more notes. Did the battle begin? Admiral Murphy gave us a demonstration, HFY said. She ordered one of her cargo ships to ram one of our scout vessels. Both ships exploded, but the explosion triggered reactions in 3 more Valorian ships nearby. A chain reaction? Exactly what she had promised, HFY confirmed.
5
ships destroyed by 1 human cargo hauler. And Admiral Murphy sent us sensor readings, showing that she had 49 more ships ready to do the same thing. Alina tried to imagine this. What did your fleet do? We tried to retreat to a safe distance, HFY said. But Admiral Murphy's ships followed us. She said the safe distance was outside the Sol system completely. If we stayed, she would start the chain reaction that would destroy everything. Did your commanders believe her? HFY nodded slowly. After everything we had seen humans do, yes. We believed she would really destroy her own planet rather than let us have it. So the fleet withdrew? Not immediately, HFY said. High Command ordered us to call her bluff. They said no species would really commit suicide over territorial disputes. Alina waited. Admiral Murphy proved them wrong, HFY continued. She ordered 3 more ships to ram our vessels. The explosions destroyed a dozen Valorian cruisers and sent debris flying toward Earth's moon. She was really doing it. She was keeping her promise, HFY said. Each attack brought the chain reaction closer to Earth itself, and Admiral Murphy kept sending us messages with countdown timers. 30 ships left, 29 ships left, 28 ships left. Alina shuddered. What happened next? The High Command finally understood what we were facing, HFY said, quietly. An enemy that considered mutual destruction a victory. An enemy that would rather die than be conquered. So they called for peace negotiations, emergency negotiations, HFY confirmed. The Grand Admiral himself sent a message to Admiral Murphy, begging for talks. He offered to withdraw completely from human space in exchange for an end to the attacks. Did Admiral Murphy agree? She said she would consider it, HFY replied. But first she wanted to make sure we understood the terms clearly. which were a complete Valorian withdrawal from all human territories, recognition of human sovereignty over their claimed systems, and reparations for the damage we had caused during the war. Alina looked surprised. Reparations? From the losing side? That's when we realized we weren't the winning side, HFY said. Admiral Murphy had 25 ships left. We had almost 300. But she held all the power because she was willing to use it in ways we couldn't match. What did the Valorian Empire decide? We agreed to her terms, HFY said simply. All of them. Complete withdrawal, recognition of sovereignty, reparations, everything she demanded. Alina made more notes. Why? You still had the superior force. Because Admiral Murphy had shown us the future of fighting humans, HFY explained. Every war would end the same way. Humans would escalate until everyone lost. They would sacrifice their own worlds rather than let enemies win. And that was unacceptable to the Valorians? Valorians fight for gain, HFY said. Territory, resources, glory, honor. We don't fight when the cost exceeds the benefit, but humans fight for spite. They'll pay any cost to make sure their enemies pay more. Alina sat back in her chair. So the war ended without the final battle? The war ended because of the final battle, HFY corrected. Admiral Murphy showed us that humans had turned warfare into something we couldn't comprehend. A form of combat where victory and defeat had no meaning. What do you mean? If we had won at Earth, what would we have gained? HFY asked. A burned planet in a poisoned system surrounded by debris fields that would take centuries to clear. If we had lost, we would have faced the same result. Alina nodded slowly. Either outcome would have been disaster. That's when the High Command realized the truth about humans, HFY said. You don't fight wars to achieve goals. You fight wars to make sure your enemies wish they had never started fighting you. Is that how all Valorians see humans now? The ones who survived the war? Yes, HFY replied. We have a new saying. In our military academies, never fight humans unless you're prepared to lose everything, including victory itself. Alina looked at her recording device. Why did you want to tell these stories, Commander? HFY was quiet for a long time. Because my people need to understand what peace with humans really means. And because I think humans need to understand what they are. What do you think humans are? The most dangerous species in the galaxy, HFY said simply. Not because you're the strongest, or the smartest, or the most advanced. The only species that has made warfare itself afraid of you? Alina frowned. What do you mean? Every other species fights to win, HFY explained. Humans fight to make sure that winning becomes losing. You've weaponized futility itself, and that frightens other species. It should, HFY said. Because once you start a war with humans, victory becomes impossible. Not because you can't defeat them, but because defeating them costs more than being defeated by them. The interview room fell silent. Alina could hear the distant hum of the station's engines and the sound of her own heartbeat. Do you regret the war, Commander? She asked finally. I regret not understanding humans sooner, HFY replied. We could have avoided 3 years of horror if we had known what we were really facing, which was a species that has made peace the only logical choice, HFY said. Because the alternative isn't victory or defeat, it's something much worse. Alina turned off her recording device. Thank you for sharing these stories, HFY nodded slowly. Share them well, Miss Martinez. Let both our peoples understand what war with humans really means. And let them remember that peace is the only victory anyone can win against humanity. As Alina packed up her equipment, she realized that HFY had given her more than just war stories.